welcome everyone. Today we are going to be doing the next installment of our advanced user webinar series focusing on bank reconciliation tips, tricks, and new features. And this will be led by our own Jena Hale. Jena is our Director of Accounting Implementation, and she really has the experience with management accounting and a focus on efficiency. So I'm excited to see what she'll tell us today. Jena, you want to tell us a little bit about what you'll be covering?
Yes, let me get our agenda ready. So welcome everybody. So today we're going to be going over some bank reconciliation tips. We'll be looking at some filters that you can add to try to make it easier as you're going through. Also how to create those quick transactions of cash management entry types, how to add them. And then the really great thing is there's several new cash management features that we'll be going over. We have a new cash account details where you're able to look at what's coming up, and also some cash flow analysis with anticipated transactions. And then we'll go through the corresponding reports that you can run that will pull all of that detail. So that's what we'll be going through today. I would like to note that next Wednesday, we will be having our webinar on the Bank Connect and the importing process. So today we will not be touching base on that, but we will be next week. And so we do have a special offer right now that if you sign up for Bank Connect by June 30th, you'll get 3 months free. But if you do attend next week's webinar, which we realize is near the end of the month, you'll have an additional week until July 8th to still be qualified for that special. Since we realize if you want to come in and actually see how that works and then want to have some time to make that decision, we are offering that to anybody that does attend the webinar next week. So let me share my screen and we'll get started. And with this, as we go through, we'll go through first on some of the bank reconciliation tips. For each section, when we finish, if you have questions, we can address those right then, and then we'll go on to the next area. So feel free to put that in the chat section, or we'll even ask after if anybody wants to ask any direct questions. So we're going to start today in our reconciliation statements. We will leave that. And so here we've created one that right now is on hold and that hasn't really been started. On this, I am going to update our reconciliation date to the 30th. And here with load documents up to, this will be a tool I'll show you in a little bit how you could utilize your load document dates up to be able to quickly toggle. So in the system, you are able to filter, and I'm sure many of you have used these quick filters where you look in, you can find that. But you can create permanent filters. And what this allows you to do is set different filters for different parameters that you might utilize when working through your reconciliation statement. So we're going to create one first that we're going to set up. And if you hit this little filter button over here, it's going to bring you into your filter settings. So we're going to create one that's going to pull all our Amex credit cards so that when we pull this filter, that is all we're going to view, is anything that's open and available for us to reconcile. So in here, we can hit property. And what we're going to come down to on this one is our description. There's different conditions. So you could have equals. We're going to, at this point, put contains. And for our value, we're going to hit Amex. Because we want to keep this as one that we can always use, we will save this. And then I'm going to put Amex deposits. And we'll hit OK. Now you do have some options here. If this was your default view, you can select default. But also, if you wanted to share this with other people in your company, you can share this filter. And once you share that, anybody else that is working on a bank reconciliation, independent of what property they are in, they'll be able to have these set up. So you could actually apply them for your whole portfolio and your company. So when we apply this, and it looks like we maybe didn't have any Amex in there. Let me open up all records. Oh, We have it as American Express on this one. Let me quickly update that filter. So on here, we'll just hit this filter again, and we're going to select the Amex deposits. And I'm just going to change this value to American. And then we're going to save it again. We're going to modify that and apply. And so now what you can see is anything that had American. So for this one, we probably would have wanted to utilize American Express. But for most of them, whatever you use for your daily report description, that's what you could put in for your filter. And this allows you to quickly filter down. And then in here, because it's a drop down, you can toggle back and forth. One of the other filters you may want to have is in regards to your checks and your disbursements. So once again, we can create a filter again. We're going to select here. And what we're going to do on this one is actually filter it based on the module. And we're going to have equals. And right away, it's going to give you a drop down because this is a drop down menu. We're going to select AP. We'll save here. We'll put AP. Hit OK. We'll share that and apply. And now all of our AP items that we have actually created are now here. And easily, once again, you can toggle back and forth between those different filters, which allows you then to quickly look at this view. Now, if we were to want to, as we're looking at everything and you want to do a quick filter, one thing that you may not be aware of, but if we were in here and we wanted to look at everything for Cisco, if you did not want to have to look in here, if you click on Cisco and hit Shift F, that is going to filter everything based on your Cisco. So it's a way to quickly make that filter without having to actually go into the drop down, type anything in. That Shift F is also available on any other screen, but it gives you a quick way to be able to look and see what's here, if items were cleared or not, if it was reconciled, and being able to drill into, say, a specific check number. So those are some of the filters that you can put in, trying to make this easier. The one thing you could also do is if you were looking in here and you realized, there was a chunk of these that actually needed to be cleared, but you did not want to go in and clear everything, you can always change your load document dates up. So here, if we wanted to clear everything through the 14th, we could come up here. And as you're going to see, we have a warning because these are in a balance state. And I am going to show you a feature that you can quickly release those in a few minutes. But if we wanted to be able to just load anything up through the 14th, if you say put in that date, you can see it removed that other one. And in this situation, you could come up and if all these items were posted, you would be able to come in and select toggle reconcile, and it would reconcile everything that is posted. This would be one that you may want to use also if you're looking at, say, your Amex deposits. And let me see, we don't have any on this date. So we're going to put this back into our 30th. Let me just quickly see if I have I have the filter on the description. So let's clear that filter. And now we'll go back to our Amex. And with this, just as I didn't see that filter, you can always hit this fit to screen so that you can see the whole way and see if there was something filtered. But now with Amex, if we realize and say maybe you had everything here through the end of the month and you notice that the last 3 days, those weren't cleared, but everything else was, same thing. You could load those documents up to that particular date and then toggle reconcile, and it would be one click that would clear and reconcile all of those items so that you don't have to go through and click each one individually. It just helps to make that smoother and easier. And so those are just some of the ways that you can filter, utilize a few of these buttons to make it simpler. We also have, when you're in here, your create adjustment. With the create adjustment, this is going to create a quick transaction. Now, you do need to ensure that whatever entry type you want to utilize, it is associated with your particular cash account that you're working in. You can see here we have several different ones. You could add in not just your receipts, but you could also create new ones. So if we were in here and we realized we wanted to create an overshort or maybe a bank service fee and it's not associated here, We can close this and we're going to open up just a new window so that we don't lose our reconciliation statement. And we're going to come under preferences and come into our entry types. So you can see here, we do have a bank fee one that's already there, but obviously it was not associated with that cash account. We also will create a new one that's a short. Now with this, you give it a quick short name, and then what you would need to do is come in and select whether it's a receipt or disbursement. This is going to determine what side of that cash account is either credited or debited, and your offset account would be the opposite. We're going to put cash short. Now, if you had a default offset account that you know is always going to be utilized for that entry type, you can enter this here. So we're going to put cash over. Now that we've added this, anytime that we select this, it will automatically populate with this GL code. It can be overridden, but it is a way for you to have one less keystroke. So when we save our entry types, we'll come back into banking and our cash account. And now we're going to come into our operating account. And with our entry types, we're going to add in both the short and we'll add in the bank fee. Now you do have to add those for each cash account individually. It is not one such as like the payment screen where you're able to add them. You do need to make sure you add it. I would always recommend as you're going through your bank statements or bank reconciliation, it's a good way to know which ones you need. So if you need to add new ones, you can always add them, or there may be, if they're already there and just not part of your cash account, you can add those. So now that we've added these, when we come back to create adjustment, we now can see that those are available to us. So if we had a bank fee, you just double click, you would put the date of the fee. So we're going to say it's the end of the month. If for some reason you needed a different financial period, you could put that in here. If there was a document reference, you could add that. You put in the amount. What you will notice is that with the description, it's going to auto-populate the description we had for that entry type. If you wanted to add more detail, you absolutely could. And then if you come over here, you'll see it automatically pre-populated the offset account and the sub account, because in this site we are using sub accounts. And from here, you can go right ahead if you want. You can either save it or you can release it, which means you will already be able to then right away reconcile that item. And we're going to come back to all records. And from here, I'm just going to sort this descending so we can see that entry we just made. Just rearrange that slightly. So you can see here we had this entry and we can reconcile that. Now, one thing when I was mentioning the post period, I do want to let everyone understand that within the cash management module, including some of the reports you run, some of the other activities, that the post period does not necessarily coincide with the transaction date. So if you created an invoice and maybe it was, dated January, but that period was closed, so it actually posted in April, or maybe it needed to, that you received it, but it really needs to be recorded in April. This is your cash management, not your accrual-based accounting. So whenever that cash transaction truly took place, that is when you're going to see that populate in your system. So if you created a check earlier, it's going to populate here, even if it was posted another period. So that you will start seeing in certain areas that will come in. A few of the reports, and even where you will look at your cash account balance on the reconciliation statement, if there are items that were created in a prior period and then they were posted, they will be on here. All of those cash transactions do not coincide with their posting period. So just something to be aware that all the different inquiries, reports, these truly are looking from a cash basis perspective so that you can manage your cash opposed to, say, your financial statements and when that truly hits your books. So these are a few of the items that we have in here. One of the other things, if you are ever looking at this screen and you want to be able to actually still look at that in Excel, you can always download When you download, it's going to download whatever view you currently have. So if you were in here and you only had your AP, if you were to download it, it would just download those items that you are currently viewing. This is a way that if you needed to dig in a little bit, maybe look to see if, on a deposit, if maybe something was combined when it truly made that deposit, you'd be able to quickly look and see what that calculation is. But you can always bring this out just to maybe look at it closer, especially if you had a statement that had multiple items. It just makes it easier to be able to look at those transactions. Um, there's a few things I'm going to want to show on this with like the balance here, but that's going to be in one of the next screens that we're going to look at, one of the newer screens that has actually been added to Acumatica. So on these few tips that we have here and just how to filter and quickly view your data, are there any questions? So if there's no questions, I will then move on to our next section, looking at our cash account details and a few of the items that you can do within those screens. So when we come back to banking, you're going to see that there's a few new screens under inquiries. We have cash account details, your cash flow forecast, reconciliation statement history, and anticipated cash transactions. So here we're going to start with our cash account details. And so this screen, let me cancel and save. Always my favorite thing that it does warn me when I haven't saved something. When we come into our cash account details, this is going to allow you to look at all of the different cash transactions. Once again, this is going to be coming in based on the transaction date, not the post period. So we can come in here, and if we want to look at this past year, this is going to show us all of the cash transactions within every module. So if it was created in your finance, your cash, AP, AR, your daily report, these transactions will come in here and let you see, the period when it actually did post modules. You're able to drill in the document. And this really is kind of a inquiry screen similar to what you do see on your bank reconciliation. But a few of the items that you can do in here is number one, if you wanted to show a summary, it's going to roll this up per date when there was entry, so you could just see an ending balance. If you want to see the detail, we can also include unreleased. And so with this feature, if something hasn't been released, say maybe your daily report, you've had the pre-release, but it hasn't fully been released, or you've created a payment but haven't, actually mailed it out and you want to see where that's at. If you pull this in here, it's going to start showing you and including those items so that you can see your cash balance. And so what is nice here, let me fit this to screen, is that with each of these items, it's going to show if it was cleared or reconciled. So you can actually see items that we've already reconciled. You can also see what hasn't been. So I did create a few quick filters here, and I created one that's uncleared transactions. So what this is going to show me now is everything that's outstanding for the period I'm looking at. And if you wanted to, we can go back to whatever date we want with this transaction. And here, it's going to show us what we have outstanding from a debit, what we assume we're going to be getting in as receipts. It's also going to show us what our credit total is. So if you want to quickly see what is outstanding, you can do this. And then throughout the month, if you come in and you realize something actually has been cleared, so you can use this screen to clear transactions throughout the month. So if you were to come in and you're like, this check is cleared, there is a clear button. You are able to click on this one. If you hit save, it is now going to be cleared on our bank reconciliation. So, and I'm going to show you, we're going to go back to the bank reconciliation in a few minutes, but now that item has been cleared. So when you're in the bank rec, you can actually filter based on cleared items and then toggle your reconcile. So now when I cleared that item, you can see because I was in this filter, it automatically would have reduced my total of what's outstanding for credit. So you're able to kind of get an idea of where your cash balance is right now. You can pull that to look at your to look at where your cash position is. So another filter that I created was balanced records. And what this is going to pull in is any item that has been so these are your unreleased items. So it's been put in the system, but it hasn't been released. So if we were to come in here and say include unreleased, you can see those items left. And if we went back to all records, it's just going to have what has been posted. But if you want to look at your balance records, anything here that maybe should have been posted, you can easily from this screen, instead of going and opening up the items, you can actually toggle these buttons, and then we can come up here and hit release, and it's going to release those items directly. So obviously this check hasn't been printed. Let me see if I can find one that hasn't had that. So if it hasn't been printed like this, so it's actually balanced but hasn't been printed, it still needs to go through that step. But if this had been printed, you could move directly there. So we're going to hit this GL entry. We will refresh. It will, that's the only unfortunate thing, is it can start back over. So let me get back into where we were at. So we have our balance records again. We'll click on here and hit release. Oh, my apologies. This should be able to, and I've actually went through and tested this earlier, but these should be items that are able to be released. Let me just click on one to see. Just going to hit print on this one. All right. So I'm going to quickly refresh this. I had that all set earlier, and then of course I cleared the ones that I had available. So if we come back in here, we know this check I had just printed, so we know it's ready to be released. So on this one, I guess it didn't want to. So this will release. My apologies for it not properly showing this, because this is a really nice feature that you can release these right away. And then when you go back to your bank reconciliation, I unfortunately just have some data that needed to be pushed one step farther. But you can release from here. You can also clear and save, and anything that you've selected to be cleared will be in your bank reconciliation. You are able to clear items here that have not been released. So it does allow you to see that those are cleared, even if something hadn't been released. So if you had an online payment or something where you already had processed it, but it hadn't been fully released here, you would be able to clear that. I will make note that up here with the release and clear, the release will release those items, but if you select clear, this will clear all the items on your screen. So if you only want to clear a handful of items, if you only wanted to clear, you can actually come in here and clear them one at a time and then hit save. So anything that you would have, if you hit that clear, it will clear everything you're looking at. So what this is going to show though with this clear, and we're going to come back briefly into our reconciliation statement. So from here, what we can do is actually toggle now and say true for cleared. And this is going to give us anything that had been cleared. You can see we have these items that still need to be released, but anything that is released and has been cleared, you can now toggle reconcile, because it will clear these items that are checked, because that's how it'll clear everything that we have filtered and reconcile it. And this is one way where throughout the month, you can utilize, we'll save this. You can utilize this cash account detail screen throughout the month. And even if you're working on another statement, you can go through and start clearing these items so that you could do this maybe on a weekly basis, or whatever you want, maybe before a check run, to truly see where your cash position is. This would allow you to do that, get an idea of what's outstanding or not. And then at the end of the month, when you go into your statement, you can just filter on cleared, and then you're able to go in and do a quick toggle of the reconciliation. So that is the cash account details. And let me quickly come in here. And so with this too, if you So never mind, we'll go into the reports in a second. So that's the cash account details. There's a few other items that we have along with the cash account. We do have a reconciliation statement history. This is a quick inquiry. All it's going to show you is for your accounts what reconciliations have been done. This would allow somebody, especially maybe like an owner, your controller that wants to just quickly see what's there. You're able to view this easily without that whole list and having to filter the whole list on the reconciliation statement. And at this point, if you were in here and you wanted to start your next statement, and we could even put this 8 through 7, you can see now that we moved that date, we have this here. If we didn't have one on hold, we are able to click on Create Reconciliation. We can select our account. And because we have one and it's not reconciled, it won't. But if we had this deleted, it would start creating that. So if you were like, oh, we're missing this, we need to go in, you can go directly into that and create your reconciliation statement. So that's a pretty simple inquiry screen, but it does allow you to look at that more per cash account so that you don't have the whole list here. The other really nice feature that Acumatica has brought out is our cash flow forecast. So this screen is a little bit different than the cash account details. What you'll want to do is you can put in your start date, and what it's going to do is from whatever start date, it's going to forecast out for the next 30 days transactions that are coming in and out. You would put your company branch, you would put in whatever operating account. Now there's a few items you can add. You can hit include documents without cash account. What this would be is if you had created an invoice, but you don't have a default cash account associated with it, or maybe you're not certain what cash account, so you didn't add one to the invoice. If you include this, it will pull that in because it could be a potential document that you want to look at and see if you want to pay it in this account. So you can add those in. The other option is you can say all cash accounts. What you'll notice is when you say all cash accounts, it's going to bring in every cash account for this property and it grays out the particular cash account. And then one of the other options that you have to add in is unreleased documents. As we looked at the cash account details, you can include unapplied payments, scheduled documents. So scheduled documents, if you have AP that's on a schedule, it can actually pull those documents in. And then you can show summary only. And what it's going to do is show you your cash balance on the date you selected, the start date. And the account summary is what it would be after 30 days. So what this is showing down here is you have your types. So you can have, let's see if we can put it descending. You're going to have your cash receipts, your cash on hand for your different accounts. And I'm going to go back to just our operating account. So we'd have any receipts that are coming in, your cash on hand, and anything that's anticipated to be paid out. So when you look at these items that are going to be paid out, you can see that these have a large balance. What it's pulling in with the cash to be paid out is based on its pay by date. So for these items, we obviously have payables that are outstanding. So anything that's outstanding is going to come in that it looks like it's due right then. And then throughout the month, as we scroll, you can see that we have an invoice here for Cisco that has an estimated due date, payment date of the 29th of June. So that is going to pull in. So this is going to give you an idea of whatever items that you have coming due. And if there were multiple pages, you could move back. Now, what's helpful is while we're in this banking, you can also come into anticipated cash transactions. So while that will show you AP that's coming up, AR, you might have items that you're not certain about. When are they going to come? So you can actually come in here with anticipated cash transactions and add this in. So I created one for an anticipated rent. We're going to try and pay out some bonuses. Anything that you think might be coming up and want to see how that would impact your cash position, your cash flow, you can put this in. So if you knew you were going to have maybe a really big loan payment, you can actually put this in. and put this in, none of these items are going to touch your general ledger. They are just going to populate on your cash flow forecast so that you can get an idea for the next 30 days what that would look like. And it allows you to kind of say, well, if we did this, where would we be at? What does that anticipate? So you can put as many items as you want. And as soon as you save it, when we come back into our cash flow forecast, let me just see if that was a paid out. So you'll see where some of these are vendors. Here we have that loan. And so up here on the date, now that's our bonuses. Here's that paying out the loan. And so this is all in here. Now this screen is just showing you the items that are part of this and allowing you to adjust the data. But then once you have this data how you want to see it, you can come up here and say view as a report. So it's going to bring you to your cash flow forecast. You're going to see it's going to show you your cash on hand, your cash available, your cash position. And that is going to actually take everything out. So any of your receipts would be listed here and when that's coming in. It's going to have your cash paid out. And as I said, right now, it's going to show that these ones that are outstanding, like appears that they need to be, and then what your position is at the end of those days. And as you go along, it's going to update. So of course, your cash position here has now been moved up. And as we bring in items, they will keep adjusting. So you can use this report for 30 days, however you want. You could do this in the future too. So the more that you have in the system, set as schedules, other things like that, you would be able to look at this data. So it's a way to just be able to plug in those items to really see where would you be at following those items. So those are some of the inquiry screens that we have that are new that kind of help with your cash management. Are there any questions? You can even unmute or type a question in the box.
Yeah, feel free to type in any questions into the attendee chat, and we'll answer them from there.
Well, we'll have time at the end, so I'll start going through just some of the reports then that do correspond then with the activity that we just had. So some of the reports that you may want to use is our cash account summary is one of the first ones. And so what this is going to do, it's going to show you each account, their starting and ending balance for a period. So you can select a specific cash account, but you can also leave this blank and it will pull in everything. You can set the parameters for whatever date you want. So today we're gonna look at the prior month. You can include non-cleared transactions. You can also include your unreleased transactions if you wanted to. And if you wanted to hide your details, you could allow that. But we're just going to run it with these main requirements. And what you can see here is it's going to show us for each of the different accounts, it's going to have your beginning balance and then what total receipts, total disbursements for that period, and then the ending balance. Because this one we ran without it being hiding the details, you can see on our operating account, it's actually showing the days where there was a change. And so this doesn't necessarily give you the exact details of those items, but it's going to show you the days when when those disbursements took place. So this is giving you a summary. And then kind of following what we had with our cash account details is the cash account detail report. This is going to be very similar. Once again, you can select your dates when you want to run this. And this one will require you to add a cash account because this is going to provide all of the details for that time period. And once again, if we run it, it's going to list out any transactions that took place for that period. This, as our demo, is a shortened list, but normally, for yourselves, you would probably see multiple items and you're able to kind of see if what module. You're also able to see if it was reclassified and cleared. And because we're looking at a period that we had reconciled, these are both reconciled and cleared. but this will show you what those items are. And then looking at a few of our other reports, your reconciliation statement, this is one probably most of you have run. You can also access this directly from the reconciliation screen. And I'm going to pull up our last month reconciliation. So this is one place that I do want to note where you might see a variance down here in your difference. And it's going to be a variance in, well, you may think that your bank rec is off. It is not. And this is due to the bank reconciliation pulling in transactions based on their transaction date as opposed to the posted period. So if you have a difference, those are usually items. What it's going to most likely be are items that have a transaction date earlier than the post period. And that is because when it's creating your cash account balance, which is going to take your statement ending balance that we created, and then adding in anything unreconciled back in, because there's items in here that are unreconciled, say for it's the current period, but it's posted a later date. Those are being included in this account cash balance. And what you will notice, that difference is actually the difference between the cash account and then your cash account on your trial balance. So if you ever see a discrepancy, this does not mean your statement is an imbalance, and it's not that it's done in error. Now, if you did clear the items, you will not see that because they've been reconciled, and this will be part of the statement ending balance. This is solely if those items hadn't been reconciled yet. But that is one of the places that you could see that discrepancy. And we've seen, several people kind of calling, wanting to know why there is a difference. That is completely fine. It's just showing you from almost like a timing period, the difference. So from a cash and then an accrual basis, that would be that difference. Now in here, this is going to show out all your unreconciled items that are still remaining going into your next period. If at any point you want to look at the items that were actually reconciled, you can look at your reconciliation register or register details. So the reconciliation register, and I'm going to once again just put in our May period. And this you can look at any period. You could also keep your cash account blank. So you could look at all of those cash accounts as one. And I'm going to run this without. For this right now, we only had this one. So you can see here, this is a summary. So it's going to show us what we reconciled. It's going to show us our beginning balance, what our receipts, our disbursements, and it's basically going to show that for each account. So if you had more than one, you could look at all of that. But if you wanted to be able to send to somebody what items were reconciled, which is not on the reconciliation statement, you can run the details. And with the detail one, this, you can once again run it without selecting a cash account. And I'll leave that blank just so you can see. But what it will do is it'll bring in your cash account here, list out all the items that were reconciled. And so for this, because I had reconciled a significant amount on this, it has several pages. It's going to show everything. And then if we had another account, once you got to the end of this account, it would show all the details for your next one. So you would be able to actually look at the items that were reconciled, what was processed. So that's a report that we have available for looking at the details. And the last one I did want to show, it might be something you want to utilize or not, but is the cash requirements. And so for this report, you can, run it detailed or a summary. We'll start with a summary. You can have this as your company branch. With anything that doesn't have an asterisk, you can also leave blank. So if you wanted to look at your whole portfolio, you could just say summary and run the report. And now it's going to it's going to show your cash account. And what this is showing is based on pay dates, all documents that were approved for payment. So this is showing you what requirements you may need for making payments. And so here, this is the documents, what was approved for payments, all documents, and then this shows approved for payment for the different items and different dates, because it does break it down by date, what is due. And you can look through, if you come back and hit your pencil, if we want to look at this detailed, which is going to be the more useful way to run it, it's actually going to break this out now. And what you can see is it's going to say the amount to pay, the total value of that invoice, and what's been approved to pay at that point. So you can look at this and see it is going to give you at the end of the report the total amount of those invoices, how much was approved. But this allows you to see what's outstanding if you want to just see what is our cash requirements. And this is also one of the items that does pull in when you're in your AP and the prepare payments. It does show you that what your bank balance is, where you're at, so it can kind of show you that cash flow too, along with your cash requirements. And in here, you could always put in, the specific account. If you wanted to look at a particular payment method, you could run that and it would just pull those items. So that's the cash requirements report. So these reports kind of all pull in from your reconciliation statement in to be able to do the inquiries. I would definitely recommend, if you haven't started using the cash account details and you're not using the Bank Connect for doing imports with your bank rec, that this cash account details is definitely a great screen throughout the period to be able to update what's cleared, just to save that time at the end of the month, while also being able to see where you're at financially, what your cash position is, and being able to have that, say, weekly, maybe even bi-weekly look into your position. So definitely some new tools that are there and definitely helpful. So those are the items that we wanted to go over today. Are there any questions?
Thank you, Jena. I think that was a really great overview and detailed. Wonderful. All right. Well, thank you so much, Jena.
Yes, and please let us know if you have any questions. More than happy to help and talk any more about any of these features that we have.
And thank you to everyone who attended.